September 7th, 2023, Casco County Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Please rise and join me for the pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Michelle, would you call the roll?
Member Aldrett?
Here.
Member Vanderhayden?
Here.
Member Hubbard? Here. Member Peters?
Here.
Member Estrada?
Here.
Vice Chair Garza?
Here.
Chairman Benedict?
Here. Any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda, Chairman.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, you have minutes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, sir.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 3rd.
Second.
Okay. Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the first two items on our agenda are part of the consent agenda, which we will act on them all in one step, and will not see any presentations for them unless somebody from the public or from the commission would like to see the presentation on those two items. We have two items on the consent agenda. A major site plan for the Opus Group and a major site plan for Pinnacle Design, Inc. Anybody like to see any of those, have those pulled? Seeing none, commissioners, motion?
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Can I ask a general question about the consent items rather than hear the full presentation? I guess this is part of our discussion.
Well, ask the question.
Okay.
We'll tell you you're out of order.
I just have a question for staff. So both of these major site plans do not have approved traffic impact analysis. Is there a reason why those aren't getting approved before they're before the commission?
It's a good question, Commissioner. So in some of our reports, as we always do, we have conditions outstanding. both are major site plans. So the analysis from staff is that it will not change anything in the actual site plan. There are potential impacts to off-site improvements that may be impacted, and staff feels that we can kind of push that can down the road to the time of site development. We will still be getting an approved TIA for all these projects prior to issuing any site development permit, because we need to have the major site plan approved and finalized before issuing those site development permits. So it does give applicants the opportunity to address comments while they're preparing for construction, since it goes a little bit at risk for those applicants at that point.
Okay. I just think it's a requirement of the submittal, and it's not being approved prior to being agendized, so I think it's something that we should move forward to getting approved ahead of putting them on an agenda, just because some of these projects are going to require those offsite improvements that really will affect, these are major industrial projects in some areas that would require some of those improvements. And I personally, just as a commission member, I'd like to make sure that those get done.
Understood.
Okay, all right, thank you, appreciate that. Anyone want to see any of these presentations, want to have them pulled from the consent agendas? Seeing none, commissioners, need a motion?
What are we looking for?
I need a motion.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
I have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Good, all right, would you call the roll?
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
Aye.
Chairman Benedict?
Yes. Okay, on to our regular agenda. First item is to have a public hearing considering a request by Mike Kleck for a zone change from Garden and Light Industrial I-1 to General Industrial I-2 for about 5 acres. 11th and Schultz, DSA 23-00183. Jacqueline, talk to us.
All right, good evening, Commissioners. As noted, this request is located at the northwest corner of 11th Street and Schultz Street, as you can see on the map. The request is a zone change from I-1, which is Garden and Light Industrial, to I-2, General Industrial. Here's the review criteria that's outlined in the staff report. The first one is that the action is consistent with the city's general plan, including goals, policies, and other applicable elements. And one of the main goals of the manufacturing industry general plan land use category is to encourage and promote developers to utilize infill sites, as well as the rezoning conforms to the general plan for its land uses, densities, intensities within the range of identified uses of the general plan. And I-2 is an appropriate zoning district within the manufacturing and industry land use category. And then that the proposed zone change is necessary and proper at this time. And per the 2030 general plan, expansion of industrial zoning within the manufacturing and industry areas is needed to meet the goals and policies of the city. And by changing this to I-2, it allows additional uses to take place in this infill type setting, meeting the goals and policies of the general plan. I did also want to note that at time of major site plan, staff will ensure compatibility measures are addressed with the adjacent residential development there. Adjacent to the site east of Schultz, there is a 75-foot setback from the zoning district in when it's adjacent to residential zoning. Regarding the notification efforts, staff and applicant met all the requirements. I did receive one phone call since the writing of the staff report, and it was just an inquiry about the request. No comments or anything else. So with that, staff recommends approval to City Council of a zone change request, DSA 23-00183, from Garden and Light Industrial I-1 to General Industrial I-2, per the condition of approval, which is our typical right-of-way requirement. Happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Very good. Commissioners, questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll ask the applicant or their representative to come up and address the commission. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Commissioners and Mr. Chairman, my name is Michael Keck. My work office is at 1919 North Treco Road here in Casa Grande. I don't really have anything to add. I'm just here to answer questions, but I did want to let the commissioners know that we're very appreciative of the work that and cooperation we get with the planning department here at the city. They've always been responsive to us when my partner and I bring project ideas into their office. We appreciate their work and we appreciate your time this evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Do we need to check that mic?
Yeah.
Are we okay?
Yeah, it's on.
Yep, it's working.
I think he was just talking soft.
Do I need to repeat that, sir? or
No,
you're
I
okay?
think
All right.
we're all right.
Yes.
Call me later.
All right, very good. Commissioners, any questions? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. All right, at this point, I'll open the public portion of the meeting to address this issue. Anybody from the public that would like to address this particular issue, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the commissioners.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, sir.
Recommend that we forward a recommendation of approval to the City of Council, the zone change requested DSA-23-00183 from Garden and Light Industrial I-1 to General Industrial I-2 to the City Council with conditions set by staff.
Very good. I got a motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? I was a little concerned on this one about changing it to a more a heavier use. Looking at the uses that match these two, I don't see that there's a big difference between them, and that, as noted, that 75-foot. There's those requirements do give us some space between there and the residential. So, my sense of it. Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Would you call the roll?
Member Aldrete?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
Aye.
Chairman Benedict?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a public hearing and consider a request by 5-9 Design Group on behalf of Illuvion Communications.
Who?
Yeah, that one. That word right there. DSA 22-00172 and 173. Jacqueline, talking to us again.
Yeah, you want to know if there is a typo on that. It should be 23.
What? What did it?
It has the 22 date instead of 23 on the agenda. I just wanted
And I
to.
read it literally.
You-
Yeah, okay. Dang me.
Okay, the next item, as noted, the first request is a major site plan to construct a 204 square foot building in a B2 zoning district, and a conditional use permit for a special purpose fence that's 8 feet high that will be of wrought iron fencing. The purpose of the special purpose fencing is because when it's adjacent to residential, it's limited to 6 feet in height. And here is the site plan. I'll get into this in a little more detail on another slide as well. So here are the conditional use permit criteria as well as the major site plan criteria. All of these are covered in the staff report. I'll be going over the 3 highlighted items. Looking at the major site plan first, the setback requirement adjacent to residential is that there's a 45-foot setback from the building. As you can see, this exceeds the requirement. And one of the other items is landscaping. There will be a 15-foot landscape frontage along both 8th Street and Arbor Street that will be consisting of 1 tree and 3 shrubs per 30 feet to help with the compatibility between the commercial zoning and from the residential site as well. And then looking at the conditional use permit, that the proposed use will have no adverse effects upon abutting property. As noted earlier, B2 fencing requirements are limited to 6 feet when adjacent to residential zoning unless a special purpose fencing CUP is obtained. The purpose of this fence is to provide additional security measures, and it will be made up of wrought iron and not CMU to help with the screening. And as noted, there will be landscaping as well that is required as part of the major site plan. Regarding notification efforts, staff and the applicant met all the requirements, and I did not receive any inquiries or comments from the public. With that, staff recommends the commission approve the major site plan with the following conditions of approval to be reflected in the site development permit. And staff recommends the commission approve the conditional use permit and associated resolution for DSA 23-00174. Happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
All righty, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Hey, Jack, is that in that lot by where the food truck thing's going to be?
Yes, it's on the same street.
That's the lot right next to that?
It is,
It goes the corner and then back 2 lots?
so
from-
there's going to be one lot in between them.
Yeah, so the other, okay, the 2 to the left is where the food truck thing is, okay.
Any other questions for staff? Nope. All right, would the applicant or their representative please come forward and address the commission?
Hello, Mike Staples. I'm with Livion Communication. Address is 7065 Chandler.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments that you'd have about it?
Just with the fence, I know it's a little bit over the standard. I just want to deter vandalism or anything, just kind of keep everything
Okay.
safe as possible there, because it is going to be our central office to bring broadband service to the city. So keeping that up at all times and without having issues is one of the most important things there.
Okay. Listeners, any questions for the applicant? I did have one in the write-up. In the write-up, you talked about having no water or sewage utility required or provided. The landscaping is going to have to be maintained. There'll have to be water there. Have you figured
So
that
we'll
out?
Yeah, we'll have to get a water to where we can service the landscaping there.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a manned site.
Right. All right. Okay, just wanted to be sure you're on board with that, because that's something that is important to us.
Yeah, no sense of the vegetation out there dying and having to replace it, so I understand.
All right, very good. Yeah, you're required to maintain it. So, anything else? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate you being here. Now I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public who'd like to address this issue, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the commission. Hey, whose turn?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like
Yes.
to make a motion.
Thank you.
Make a motion that the commission approve the major site plan for DSA-22-00172 with the conditional use permit. Well, no, that's a separate item, so.
So I have a motion to approve DSA 23-00173, the major site plan.
Second.
Yeah, with the retention basin and a proposed driveway that was added by staff.
Very nice, thank you.
Second.
Good. Any, got a motion second, any discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
Aye.
And Chairman Benedict.
Yes. B, commissioners, got another step.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion
Thank you, sir.
that the commission approve a conditional use permit for a special permit fence for 8-foot-high wrought iron fencing covered under DSA-22-00173.
Okay, I have a motion to approve DSA 23-00173. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Good, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Member Aldred?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
Aye.
Chairman Benedict.
Yes. Okay, Jacqueline, the next one says 22 also. Is it 23?
No, that one is correct.
That's correct, okay. All right, very good. Next on our agenda is a public hearing and consideration for a request from the City of Casa Grande Planning and Development Department, DSA 22-00241. Go, talk to
Yeah.
me.
I just want to know if we were already up to 241 this year, that would be scary.
That would be- Well, 173 is pretty good.
But we'll probably get pretty close by the end of the year. All right, this is for the self-storage text amendment. Currently, self-storage is only allowed in the B4 Community Services Zoning District with the conditional use permit, as well as I2 with the CUP, and then PADs, however, they must meet the PAD requirements for that zoning. So the purpose of this text amendment is to allow self-storage facilities in 2 additional zoning districts, B2, which is general commercial, as a conditional use permit, and I1, light industrial, as a principally permitted use. We're also going to be changing B4 and I2 from a conditional use permit to principally permitted uses. Currently, the CUP standards for self-storage are outdated and do not result in the type of self-storage facilities that would be an asset to the community. We have been seeing many, and then one of the reasons behind this text amendment is we've been receiving a lot of requests for proposals on self-storage for a variety of reasons. One of them could be, the smaller houses and smaller lots. They need additional areas to store their stuff, as well as we have, besides the Cardi Ranch storage facility that was approved last month, we haven't seen a self-storage product in quite a while. So staff feels it's a good use on sites without certificates of assured water supply, and they're relatively good neighbors because they're low traffic generators. So we'd like to open this up to additional zoning districts and allowing reduced setbacks, but we also wanted to raise the standards and aesthetics requiring additional development standards. So with that, going over the overview, that's all outlined in the staff report and the text amendment red lines. So we've revised this self-storage definition. We've added self-storage to as a conditional use within B2, changed to principally permitted uses for I1 and I2, and then created development standards, and then also revised the setback tables for all the zoning districts, as well as the parking requirements. So again, I know you saw these last week, but here's the revised definition as well as the setback requirements. And just again, here's just some examples of the architectural details that we're looking at in these products. So with that, staff recommends that Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to City Council to establish self-storage facilities within the general commercial B2 zoning district as a conditional use permit, establish self-storage facilities within garden and light industrial I1 as principally permitted use, and changes self-storage facilities from conditional use in community services B4 and general industrial I2 zoning districts to principally permitted uses. Establishes development standards for said self-storage facilities within B2, B4, I1, and I2, and the following sections are to be amended. Happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
All righty.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Just a quick question for Jacqueline. Give me the definition of a principally permitted use.
So that's the ones that are allowed by right in that zoning district that does not require a conditional use permit. So as long as they meet the requirements, and with these, it would be the additional development standards, it would just require a major site plan approval.
Got it, okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Since they are the applicant, I think they've had their time. So, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public like to address this issue, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the commission.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to forward a recommendation to City Council for a request by the City of Casa Grande Planning and Development Department for a zoning code text amendment, DSA 2200241, with the following amendments.
Okay,
I'll second.
very good. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Chair,
Yeah.
I'd just like to thank the planning department for hearing me out on this one and coming back and kind of changing it up a little bit. So, thank you.
Very good. All right. Yeah, good work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, please call the roll.
Member Aldret?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
Aye.
And Chairman Benedict?
Yes. All right. Okay, down to number 4. Public hearing and consideration for Sun Life. Following up to associated with the 10 acres at Florence Boulevard and Hennis Road, DSA 2300144 and 143. Okay. Jim?
All right. Good evening. So as you introduced this item, there's 2 applications under consideration this evening to accommodate a proposed Sun Life Health Center at the southwest corner of Florence Boulevard and Hennis Road. Just a quick overview of the proposal is the subject site is 10 acres. It's commercially zoned. It's part of the Crossings Planned Area Development Zone District. The proposed building would be 4 stories, 60 feet tall in height with up to 10 additional feet for equipment screening. The proposed building is over 100,000 square feet in size, and it would be a medical office building that would accommodate a variety of different uses, such as family practice, a radiology and lab portion, pharmacy, a women's center, pediatrics, and also it would house administrative offices. There's 2 requests being proposed this evening. The first is the major site plan itself that would approve for the actual location of the building and parking areas. Here's an excerpt of the site plan. And here's the proposed elevations of the building. As you can see, it's of modern style architecture with a variety of different building materials. And the other request is an amendment to the zoning. Now, a medical office use is already permitted there, but why an amendment is being proposed specifically is the current PAD limits the maximum height of to 50 feet, and the request is to amend the PAD to allow a maximum height for this parcel to be 60 feet with an additional 10 feet to allow for screened rooftop equipment. The PAD is also being amended to introduce specific landscape requirements that are slightly deviated from the standard city code landscape requirements. As a planned area development zone, it can customize its own standards. It doesn't have to follow the city code entirely. And so the intent behind that is to introduce some customized landscape requirements. They're doing the same thing with signage rules. They're providing verbiage as well to detail screening measures of equipment. And then they're also revising the rear setback. The zoning currently stipulates that a minimum of a 15-foot rear setback is allowed. And they're actually making it more restrictive since this is such a tall building. It would help bolster compatibility from the residential zoned areas that lie to the south. The review criteria associated with both an amendment to the planned area development and major site plans are very similar, so I'm going to provide an overview that encompasses both applications. And I want to specifically focus on the 4 highlighted items. I also forgot to say that this type of an amendment to the PAD is a planning commission only amendment. It does not have to go to city council. And the reason is that the use is already permitted. They're not changing the use, nor are they increasing the allowed density for that site. And so as such, this is a planning commission level type amendment. But moving on to the criteria, the first criteria that I want to talk about is conformance with the city's general plan. So this sits within the community corridor land use designation of the 2030 general plan. And it supports and accommodates and recommends a mixture of uses, a variety of densities and intensities. The community corridor designation promotes having commercial and office uses among residential uses of varying densities. I do want to point out that immediately adjacent to the site to the south is a project under development known as Bungalows on Hennis. It's a medium density residential development. And then to the west on the other side of Via del Cielo is Bungalows on Florence. That's a little bit further along. So with these 2 developments coupled with the proposed Sun Life, you can see that there is a mixture of uses that will complement the commercial uses that are along the Florence Boulevard corridor. Another aspect of the community corridor category is that buildings are encouraged to be brought forward closer to the street to enhance the relationship between pedestrian activity and developed spaces. And with that, there's a goal to de-emphasize parking areas by minimizing the amount of area between the building and the street, encouraging only landscaping to sit between the building and the street, and placing parking either on the building to the building side or to the rear. So while there is some parking area proposed on the site plan between the building and the street, you'll notice it's only a minimum parking area. They've only provided a one drive aisle with parking on both sides, and the setback between the front property line and the building sits just shy of 150 feet. That's the closest setback to the property line than any other side. Of course, this site is surrounded by streets on 3 sides. The next major road, similar to Florence, is Hennis Road to the east, and that also has a relatively reduced setback given the scale of the building at 4 stories. The greatest setback that's proposed is to the south property line, the rear setback, and that's where we would want the greatest setback because, as I pointed out, there is residential development to the south and to the southwest. So they're providing some compatibility with respect to the planned multifamily while meeting the objective of bringing the building forward. The other thing I want to point out about the site plan is they are providing several pedestrian connections to the public street network. There's 2 pedestrian connections from the building to Via del Cielo, which is the road to the west, and they're providing a pedestrian connection to Hennis Road on the east, thereby addressing that pedestrian objective of the general plan. The next criteria that I want to talk about is landscaping. Now, as I mentioned, one of the reasons for the amendment is to introduce some alternative landscaping standards to the PAD, and it's reflected on their major site plan. So if you were to look at the traditional landscape code, it requires 1 tree and 3 shrubs for every 30 feet of street frontage. The minimum street frontage depth is required to be 15 feet with 60% minimum vegetative ground cover. There's to be 2 trees and 5 shrubs for every 3 parking spaces, 1 parking lot island for every 10 spaces, and the requirement to provide a minimum of 10% open space. They are proposing their own version of landscape requirements, which they're eligible to do as part of a customized zoning, being that this is a planned area development. And in some respects, they're exceeding some of the requirements. For example, they're proposing 1 tree and 3 shrubs for every 30 feet, but not just adjacent to streets, but around the entire perimeter, so that you will get some additional plantings even to the south. There is a recommended technical modification associated with this request, dealing with the fact that it stipulates that the minimum street frontage depth that there shall be a minimum depth of 15 feet for Hennis and Florence, but it's silent with regard to what that minimum depth is along Via del Cielo. And it also doesn't stipulate what the minimum depth is from the southern property line. We're recommending that they just that they make it 15 feet for Via del Cielo, and then just provide what that minimum depth is going to be from the south property line. It needn't be as deep as 15, and it probably isn't based on the way it scales out on the site plan. But they are proposing only 30% vegetative ground cover along the street frontages instead of 60%. And then instead of tying a certain number of trees and shrubs for every parking space, they're proposing a mixture of trees and shrubs based on an area around the building, and then based on a number of trees and shrubs on each parking lot island, which they are still planning to provide 1 parking lot island for every 10 spaces. And then they're providing their own formula for trees and shrubs within landscaped areas, which our code actually is silent on. It doesn't say when there's a retention area or whatnot. It doesn't actually give a specific quantity of plantings that's required within this area. So in some respects, gives staff more direction when reviewing a final landscape plan, which would be submitted and administratively considered at a later part of the review process. But the big thing to note is that they're providing a minimum of 35% open space on their site plan, and so it well exceeds the 10% that would ordinarily be provided. Another amendment is to the signage. So as a PAD, there actually isn't specific sign code rules that apply, because it is a customized zone district. Our sign code is silent with regard to PAD zones. However, if we were to apply the most comparable zone district, B2, it would require, or allow rather, up to 6 freestanding signs, up to 30 feet in height, and 200 square feet per sign face, and it would allow for attached signage to be up to 2 square feet of sign area per linear front foot of building elevation. What they're proposing is up to 3 freestanding signs at only 20 feet in height. They will still get 200 square feet per sign face. They are reducing the, what would be palatable in terms of the total number of freestanding signs, but as an exchange, they're asking for an increase in the amount of attached signage, up to 2.5 square feet per 1 linear foot of building elevation. Staff feels that that is appropriate, given this is a fairly large building. Usually when we're reviewing signage on buildings, they're not this large. And so it is about scale, and at 2.5 square feet of sign area per 1 foot of building elevation on a building this size, we found that that's appropriate. And they are noting that on the rear elevation, there can't be any signage over 20 feet in height that is illuminated between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The last criteria that I want to go over is probably the most significant, parking and anticipated traffic conditions. So they are meeting the standard city parking code, which requires 1 parking space per 200 square feet of medical office use, as well as 1 parking space per 400 square feet of office use. That would yield the requirement of 553 parking spaces, and they're providing 555 parking spaces. But with regard to the traffic conditions, this site was chosen by Sun Life by and large of its location. I'll go back to this slide real quick, and as I mentioned previously, it's surrounded by 3 streets. So it not only has great visibility for their customers and for their brand, but it also is next to streets designed to carry a high volume of traffic. Both Florence Boulevard and Hennis Road are designated as principal arterial roads, which means ultimately there'll be a total of 6 travel lanes, 3 lanes in each direction. Via del Cielo on the west is a minor collector, which is designed to be ultimately 60 feet wide with a travel lane in each direction. And here's their ultimate street profiles. The principal arterial applies to both Hennis and Florence, and then the minor collector profile applies to Via del Cielo. The tricky thing about principal arterial roads, and again that's Hennis and Florence, is we have access management standards that require a distance of 660 feet for right-in and right-out access between intersections and driveways and between each driveway. And then otherwise, if it's going to be full access, there's a requirement for that distance to be a 1/4 mile. And the dilemma is the site is not deep enough to meet basically either requirement for right-in, right-out, nor full access. What's shown on this graphic is the number of driveways proposed, identified in the black circles. They're proposing 1 full access onto Via del Cielo to the west, and they're proposing 2 driveways onto Hennis. The more northerly one is right-in only. There's not the ability to go right out or left out. It's just for vehicles that turn onto Hennis to make a right into the site. They are proposing a full access drive near their southern boundary. They've pushed it as south as possible. And that is so that it aligns with the commercially designated site on the other side of Hennis, to ensure that whenever that goes to develop, there will be a full access opportunity there, not only serving the Sun Life site, but the commercially designated area on the other side of Hennis. The issue, though, is that there's only 578 feet from Florence Boulevard to that full access drive, where technically a 1/4 mile would ordinarily be required. And then between the intersection and that first driveway, there's only 340 feet where 660 is typically required because it's not full access, it's a limited access intersection. And then the distance between their most northern driveway and their full access driveway is only 180 feet where ordinarily 660 would be required. So the applicant has been working with staff on the deviations from those access management standards, and we're conceptually okay, and I should say maybe more than conceptually, we have agreed to the locations as proposed. However, the TIA needs to justify and support how we can accept those deviations while still maintaining an adequate and safe traffic flow. Ultimately, and in short order, I'll explain what I mean, is there will be a traffic signal constructed for northbound Hennis, because currently Hennis does not extend south of Florence. So that's going to be an improvement that would be done in conjunction with the site. And then because there is a full access drive proposed to the south, and because it is substantially shy of our access requirements, it would be made into a more safe and palatable condition if ultimately there's a traffic signal there accommodating full turn movements, not only for this site, but for the eventual commercial development on the other side of Hennis Road. They are proposing, as per their TIA, several turn lanes. There will be a eastbound right turn lane onto Via del Cielo at Florence, as you see to the upper left. They're also proposing an eastbound right turn lane onto Hennis at Florence Boulevard. And they're proposing a right turn lane into the first right-only site at their northern driveway. There has been some discussion to be worked out in the TIA with regard to the need for a turn lane to go into the full access drive. And so that's one of the details that remains as a technical modification. However, whether there is ultimately a turn lane provided there and the other nuances, the other technical corrections that are being recommended with regard to the traffic report are felt not to ultimately affect the actual site layout. It could lead to additional off-site improvements, but staff is comfortable with recommending approval despite the fact that the TIA still needs to be perfected because they are largely off-site improvements, and what will happen is that their next step of development would be to submit a site development permit and a public improvement permit. And the way we are wording the technical modification is we cannot accept for review a public improvement permit until a TIA has been met with the satisfaction of the city traffic engineer. With regard to the public notification process, there was notification mailed out to an area of 300 feet surrounding the site. There was also a publication in the Casa Grande Dispatch and a sign posted on the site. Staff did not receive any comments. We just received one inquiry from Banner Health, a neighbor of them, but they had just wanted an additional copy of the public notice, but we didn't receive additional feedback. So staff does make the following recommendations. First of all, with regard to the amendment to the crossings PAD zone, we are recommending that Planning Commission approve this, subject to two technical modifications. Just clarify that all the street frontages are to have a minimum landscape depth of 15 feet, and then provide a final revision to the PAD guide that reflects only those standards that the revision allows, And then also, I had omitted this, but to clarify what that depth is along the southern boundary. And then staff is also recommending that Planning Commission approve the major site plan, subject to the following technical modifications that the staff report covers and that I have touched upon on the presentation. As you'll see, the fourth condition is the longest because it is with regard to that TIA. We have since received a revised TIA last week, but staff has not had the opportunity to confirm that that newest TIA addresses these 11 recommended corrections. And then ultimately, as a result of approving that TIA, I guess just food for thought. If it does ultimately result in any nuances of the site plan actually changing, we would have to determine whether that would be a significant change, which it's not foreseen to be, but if it is, it would have to come back in front of Planning Commission as a major amendment. We don't anticipate that. What I anticipate is that there'll be some subtle updates really to the off-site improvements. The site plan might ultimately reflect a additional turn lane to that full access drive. If it's anything greater than that, but it doesn't rise to the level of a major amendment, we would require a minor amendment to the site plan to reflect any site plan changes, and that could be administratively reviewed. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, commissioners, questions from staff?
Just a comment.
Yep.
Just a comment. Jim, it just from the naked eye, it looks like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse here. I mean, there's so many items that need to be addressed.
Important items, I think, things that need to be addressed
Right,
before we're
and-
here.
And I know that you've been in negotiation with the developer, and have they verbally agreed to all of these items that need to be corrected?
Commissioner Peters, so I agree that the screen's pretty lengthy with verbiage. I would say that these first three conditions are pretty boilerplate, technical modifications. We do have a water report, however, it too has some items that have to be verified, but that's fairly standard with these plans. And then there's also, the second item is just more of a condition in that we would need ultimately right-of-way dedication, but that usually does follow the approval of the major site plan. We really can't ask for that prior to. And then the third one is there is some modifications or updates that have to be made to the grading and drainage plan, but they're seen as pretty minor. Ordinarily, we would perfect that during the next phase of the process, which is through the site development permit. With regard to the fourth item, the traffic item, as I say, even though it is a lengthy list, the list is seen as not to result in site plan changes. It's going to result in potentially off-site changes. I think the applicant's well aware of these, and they are here to speak to that. But that's why we're comfortable presenting this evening, provided that these next steps are followed.
Okay.
No, Chairman, I'd love to hear from the applicant just about addressing all these, just because there's significant comments where I feel like they should be addressed before it gets before us.
Okay.
Yeah, we're approving or not approving a major site plan. So, I mean, there's not a lot to follow after this. After we give it approval, then there's a lot of stuff, a lot of work that's got to be done after we already approved the site plan. So,
Okay.
just a concern.
Well, I think it's a great use. I want people to be able to access the site safely, entering and exiting Florence Boulevard.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I kind of just had a question for staff. On the site plan, there are the two retention basins. One of them has a trash enclosure in it, and then it also says future parking, and then the other one has a future warehouse in it. So are those oversized on the site plan so that they could provide that space in the future, or what's going on with that?
Commissioner Elder, exactly. They're basically functioning as temporary basins for now.
Okay.
Because in both areas, they do identify the surrounding the building, they're also identifying some future building expansion areas. So once they go to do that, they would have to utilize those retention basins for additional parking to meet that extra square footage. So at that point, they would have to amend their site plan if they were to do an addition, and either deepen the retention basin or do underground parking retention in that area to offset that additional impervious development.
Okay, thank you.
Yes? Good. Very good, good. Okay, so would the applicant or their representative please come forward and address the commission? Please give us your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Sam Reinhard, and our business address is 865 North Arizola Road, Casa Grande. I am the Director of Community Outreach for Sun Life Health, and I've worked there for about 12 years. And I also live in this community, and I know Sun Life is the largest healthcare provider here, and we're really excited about building this project and really bringing a face right to this major entry point to Florence, and really providing a space that our patients deserve. We've been expanding offices after offices. We have 6 patient front doors currently, and so we're really excited to really build this space that our patients can love and enjoy, and so can our community as we build something we can be proud of, right? We do have experts here from both our development group and our engineering firms. Should you have questions, I'm not a traffic expert. But they are here should you have additional questions.
Okay. Yes, commissioners have questions.
For the technical experts.
Yes, I don't know. I am not that, right? You want to talk healthcare? I got you.
Well, why don't you go ahead and ask the question, they can pick their expert to come up.
Oh, I would just like to know how the traffic engineer is planning to address all of these comments.
Sure.
Or maybe why they weren't addressed with the initial submittal.
Yeah, please come on up and give us your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Eric Maseko, 1130 North Alma School in Mesa. I am a traffic engineer with EPS Group.
Great.
So I guess Commissioner, just to address your comment, all of the comments that you see listed there have already been addressed and submitted in the most current version. As Jim had previously mentioned, the impact of these comments is essentially the lengths of the turn lanes that are going to need to be provided on both Florence and Hennis.
Okay, what about the traffic signal at Florence and Hennis?
What's the question exactly?
Are you planning to install the signal?
There's a signal there already, and they're planning to modify it.
Oh, that's right, there is a signal. Okay, so they're going to modify it for the turn lanes?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
How about the signal on the south end? Would that be up to the development on the east side?
I believe they're going to install the underground sort of foundations, the conduit and the boxes for the future signal. Typically, you would not want to install the traffic signal until it's actually warranted
Right.
by volume.
I just didn't know if you guys were contributing to half of the cost in the future. Okay.
Financial question. I'm just the traffic guy.
I'm sorry, I come from the background, Eric, I think you know who I am. So the turn lane, so that's going to be installed then, the extra turn lane at the southern entrance?
The one shown red?
Yep.
Yeah, we did look at that, and we can provide that. The issue is that it's going to be substandard length because of the distance to the adjacent driveway. But we can provide what is possible.
So that, I don't know, that just doesn't make me feel comfortable that you're addressing all the comments.
Well, and I think it's important to keep in mind with that specific turn lane, the circulation of the site, if you can imagine it, is if you're traveling southbound, you're going to enter into that first driveway. The site is specifically designed with the drop-off lane with that driveway, with the intent for people to drop off and then loop out around towards the south. So realistically, it's not going to be terribly convenient for someone to make a right turn at the south.
And then I'm just going to ask the question about, what was it? What was the other one? The background traffic of the bungalows. So was that analyzed?
Absolutely, yeah. And as a matter of fact, the comments asked us to add a couple more known future developments, and we've now done that as well.
And all of the intersections on the site do operate at a level of service D or better?
Correct.
Or you're mitigating them too?
Correct, yep.
Okay. Without knowing for sure that Monera has approved it, I mean, we're taking your word for it, you know? I'm sorry, I just don't feel that comfortable.
Well, and it's important to know that one version has been submitted already.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess maybe Sam can answer this question about, was there a real push to get this on an agenda sooner than later? Is that why some of these things weren't addressed ahead of the agenda?
I mean, of course, we want to break ground as soon as possible. I think the team has worked really hard and for a long time to get to this point, and we've gone back and forth with the city and our team. And so I think that both parties felt comfortable presenting it, knowing that majority of it has been mitigated, as much as it's a very large-scale project, right? So there were a ton of things that went back and forth. And so then to get to this point, I think everything has been thought through and really addressed.
All right. Thank you, guys.
I mean, we have a bunch of elderly patients, I should just say, right? So traffic is important to us too, and to keeping them safe, right?
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
so.
I think it's a great site, you know. I know the one that's on Arizola or McMurray, it's very busy.
It is.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions?
No.
The applicant. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
So now open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public like to address this issue, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to the commission. And I have a question, staff. And maybe this doesn't matter because they're really, it looks like the size of the PAD, there isn't going to be another building, although there might. Help me with the front setback. Is the front setback now going to be 149 and 11 inches? I mean, is that going to be what the setback requirement is?
Chairman Benedict, that's a great question because it's a little confusing because they're amending the PAD this evening, or requesting to amend the PAD, and they also submitted the major site plan. So I talked about standards, and I also talked about what they're providing, and some of that's blurry with regard to, well, is what they're providing the new standard? And so in the case of the front setback, the PAD allows, and this isn't changing, it allows buildings to be as close as 15 feet from the front property line. It could also be as close as 15 feet to Hennis and to Via del Cielo. So that is the minimum setback, but what's shown on the major site plan, however, is they're actually meeting all three of those minimum setbacks by being just shy of 150 feet from the front, and then as you can see to the east and west, they're well greater than 15 feet. But from a general plan compliance standpoint, we would welcome them to be as close, of all the setbacks, we want them to be closer to Florence than to any other street, so that it helps meet that building forward intent. And I should say, it's not it's not a maximum setback. In other words, there's not a build to 15 feet. It's just you can't build any closer than 15 feet. So they're meeting that in all the appropriate directions.
Yeah, and we're not, that's not up against a residential or anything else.
Right.
They do have it does stipulate the back.
Yeah, the one revision to the PAD they did make was that for buildings greater than 24 feet in height, it has to be at least 75 feet away from the rear property line. And as you can tell, they're more than meeting that.
Very good. Okay, commissioners, back to you. Somebody, come on now. Don't be shy.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
I'd love it.
to forward, missed my spot.
No, we're approving.
Or approve a major site plan, a major amendment to the crossing PAD subject to the following technical modifications. Revise the PAD guide to state a minimum average landscape buffer depth along the south boundary, and to clarify that the minimum average landscape buffer depth along all street frontages is 15 feet, and to provide a final revision of the PAD guide that reflects only those standards that the revision allows, omitting previous or previously proposed standards.
Okay. DSA 2300144, I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we good?
We're good.
Okay, please call the roll.
Member Aldrete?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
I'm not sure on this one. I think I would feel more comfortable if I had everything in front of me with the new amended everything. There is a lot on this that we still haven't addressed. So my vote is no at the moment.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
I'm going to vote aye to the PAD amendment, but that's probably it tonight.
Chairman Benedict?
Yes. All right, PAD amendment passes. Next step, commissioners.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
Thank you.
to approve major site plan, final development plan, subject to the following technical modifications as listed by staff. DSA 2300143.
Thank you. I've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Member Aldrete?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
No.
Member Peters?
No.
Member Estrada?
I'm very conflicted on this one as well. I mean, with it being the final development plan. I vote yes.
Vice Chair Garza?
I'm going to vote no on this. Transportation is important to me, and it needs to be addressed before it gets to the commission, not only for us to hear it, what the future plans are, but for the public to be able to provide input, and it feels like they just need some work to do. So I think the site's great. I just think it needs some more work.
Chairman Benedict?
A lot of us are conflicted apparently on this one, and I certainly join. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that we just don't know that we have an answer to. And, council, if we turn this down, can they bring it back? What's the steps?
They can. I think there's a waiting period, so I'd have to look at the code. If you want to give me a minute. Unless you guys know off the top of your head.
So I know that for council-type PED amendments, they have to wait 90 days, but I don't know if this type of PED amendment they do. We would have to
It's a
confirm.
major site plan.
Yeah,
It's a
it's-
PAD
Oh,
amendment.
sorry.
Yeah, the major site.
Sorry, I was getting the two processes mixed up. Yeah, I'd have to check the code. I think Joe's looking it up.
Mark, it'll be 1768, one.
No, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. You know, it's a consideration if we're putting them off 3 months, 6 months, or, you know, what. Because I think what we all want is for them to do the whole,
Exactly.
yeah, to have the whole thing ready for us so that we're confident that everybody is confident and we're certain, I don't think any of us are, you know, in the position that we want to stop it, or we'd like, I think, I hear everybody pretty pleased with the product, but we don't know exactly what it is. We're not certain that everybody knows exactly what it is.
I think,
If it gets denied, there's a procedure that it can be placed on a city council agenda. So I don't see any waiting period.
So it would not come back to us, it would go to council?
Yeah, they can appeal it to council, correct? And then
It's not really an appeal necessarily, but they can do a written application to get it on a council agenda.
there's also an opportunity to table, correct?
is there an opportunity to just continue the case to the next meeting, and that gives them some time?
That's table.
Oh, okay.
Right.
The table, I think, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, tabling is obviously an option, but we have a motion on the floor, so we're gonna have to do something with the motion.
Yeah, we'd have to, I don't know the Robert Rules of Order to pull it when it's in the middle of it, when you're in the middle of voting.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that.
Can you deny this and then make another motion to table? Just so we can finish this out, or
That would
finish?
kill
That would kill it.
Yeah.
So how do you make it so we can table it at the point that we're at? There has to be a plan B.
Chairman,
Yes,
could I pose a question to you?
please.
If we were to wait and get a full, or evaluation of what's already been submitted, do we see this site plan changing? Where would a new access point come from? Or how would any of these access points change? And that's where I feel comfortable approving the site plan, because what they've evaluated and what we've heard from what our code says their access points need to come from and what they can allow, it seems as though they have gone through that to mitigate it. And there isn't much that can happen on site to make it any more safe, in my opinion, as to where they could locate those. Whether they remove that right in, right out, which I don't think would be smart. I'm not a traffic engineer, but if that's where they're planning to have a lot of their traffic coming in, then you would be pushing it down to that full access, which is not at the quarter mile, which would probably not be safe.
Right, and then
And
you'd be
so-
overloading that.
Yeah, and so that's where I don't think there's much change that would come to this site plan that would happen from those amendments after being reviewed, what they've have submitted. And that's where I feel comfortable approving this site plan.
That is certainly the position the staff has taken, and I hear that. Maybe you could hear from the engineers, their comments about, are we comfortable that this plan is going to work without causing us more headaches than?
Mr. Chairman, I hear your voice, really a lot of unknowns here. So we don't have answer for many of those. If you allow me, I would like to do my due diligence to ascertain that this site is safe and meet all the requirements. I saw the report. I had the opportunity to quickly take a look at it. But if you ask me, I would like to have little time to review it.
Table it. We need to table it.
Didn't help me go where I wanted to go.
It didn't.
No, it really didn't. In fact, pushes me hard the other way.
Well, yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And maybe this is why I made the comment initially that we don't want to be put in these circumstances of we don't know without a complete package.
3-4 days ago.
Absolutely.
But it's also
So-
standing in the way of a great project.
It is, it
Yeah.
definitely
No, it
is.
is.
It's a great project.
It is, it's an
It
awesome
is.
project.
I
We
think
need
it's
it.
excellent.
It is a great project,
Yeah.
and I
And
seem to
it-
align with.
As I think at this point,
Commissioner
Just a second.
Alvarez.
an option is for the original mover
Yep.
and the seconder to withdraw their motion, and then if you guys want to make a new motion, we can do that, if there's no objections.
Your motion and
Not me.
Vanderheiden.
Who's second?
here's second.
Who's second?
I withdraw my second, that's it?
Well,
Well, you would have to,
Okay.
I would just assume vote tonight. That's my take on
Understand what
this.
we're doing.
I think we need to see everything. I mean, it's a really good project and everything. I'm not.
It is,
but
but
it's your,
again,
but it is your motion, so it's
Yeah,
just like it's my vote, so.
yeah. So if we table it, would they be back next month? And if we didn't, would they be able to go to council next month with that approved TIA?
So it doesn't go to council, but it would be back at this hearing next month only on the condition that Monier, our traffic engineer, agrees with, that the TIA is updated to the point where it doesn't have conditions anymore.
But what's part of Commissioner Alderet's question is in the scenario that it were to be denied, we do have a process by which the applicant can request that it go to council. And so it would be a different forum where council would make the decision. And we would reflect the history of what Planning Commission's recommendation was, what it was, and why. And it would be anticipated that at that point, we would update council that with whatever the city traffic engineer's findings were at that time, so it would be their decision. As far as the scheduling for that, council meets the first and third Monday of every month, but we aren't able to schedule anything closer than 3 weeks prior to their next meeting. So it very realistically could be, if not the second meeting in October, it might be too late for that, be the first meeting in November. If you were to go the route where it gets denied.
Yeah. Does the applicant have preference?
Before we pass it.
Well, yes, of the options in front of us.
Well, yeah, the applicant like to speak?
I don't know, should I comment on our preference? Or no? I don't know, you asked, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
Seems like we're all in a state of I don't know. Maybe a little learning for all of us, right? But I think the getting on city council agenda route would take a little longer, given the time constraints around that, right? So I think the preferred route would be to have it reviewed by traffic and brought back to you with your answers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I withdraw my motion.
That was easy. That was easy.
Yeah, I withdraw the second.
Okay. The motion has been withdrawn. It's back on the table for commissioners.
Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Thank you very much.
If Jim will go to the slide. I recommend that we continue major site plan DSA 23-00143 to the November Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
November or October?
October. Sorry. Jeez, getting too, I'm
Okay,
ready for fall.
I have a motion to table DSA 23-00143 until our meeting in October.
Second.
A second, Mr. Peters. Any discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Member Aldret?
Aye.
Member Vanderhayden?
Yes.
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
No.
Vice Chair Garza?
Aye.
Chairman Benedict?
Yep.
Okay. Action is tabled. Where are we at? Okay, next is any general comments from the public. I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Anybody from the public that would like to address the commission on any issues, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting.
Oh, we have somebody.
Oh, sorry. Please come up.
My name is Linda Dixon, 1210 Clearview Drive, Casa Grande, Arizona. I'm being a native of Casa Grande, Arizona, was born and raised here. Family was a farming family. Just want to make a comment about two projects, if I may, that have been approved. And I don't know if they were approved by you or if they were approved by the city of Casa Grande. Chamber of Commerce, I don't know, the city, I suppose, might have done this. But discussion of Hancock Blueprint and the building project that lies on Treacle and Cottonwood. I'm very disappointed that those plans were approved. My best friend is a building code inspector and not only writes building codes, but teaches them across the United States. To my disappointment, we have a severe fire hazard there. The buildings are too close together. There's an exit 1 and exit 2 to get in and out of those buildings. Should there be a fire, I'm sure we're going to lose people. And I know it's already been approved, but what I would like to ask the commission to do, please, take care of Casa Grande. Do not approve another one of those building projects in our town. I'm very disappointed that they were approved. There's so many problems there that it's just disappointing to me that it was ever passed. And I would have thanked that somebody, and I've been in the office twice, to bring attention to this. I know that a lot of people in Casa Grande are asking questions about how that passed. I said, I have no idea. So I would just ask if you would, please don't allow them to do any more building of that type in our town. Thank you.
All right, thank you, appreciate that. Yes?
Chairman, I just have a quick question for staff. Was Ms. Dixon provided the fire marshal's contact information to be able to reach out to them to discuss how they pre-approve projects before they?
I'll get her that information.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes?
Gloria Johnson Story, 1245 East Laurel Drive, and very close to Treckle and Cottonwood. Thank you, Linda. I share her concern, as you well know. But I also want to commend you tonight on the way you handled the project that you put on the table. Celeste, thank you for your motion. I was pleased because something that important can't wait too long, but we do need to dot the i's and cross the t's. Thank you all, commissioners.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anybody else like to address the commission? Okay, I'm gonna wait this time. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting. And, we got next. What's next? Got reports?
They were provided to each of you.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have a copy in front of me, so if you have any questions, you can reach out to me.
Okay, commissioners, you see, to his point, we see the actions taken.
We do have 2 administrative approvals.
Yep.
One was for Hexel Corp. It was a addition of a exterior, like a permanent exterior storage tent, and then some mechanical equipment. And then we also had a major site plan for, a minor amendment to a major site plan for Cielo Villas Apartments. There's actually no actual changes to that. It was an expired site plan that was approved in 2018 that is coming back to life as is.
Okay. The council agreed with us, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the council passed a map of dedication for Viola Street, and then they passed the annexation, the general plan amendment, and the zoning for the Greenfield Commerce Park.
Very good. And see the development reports.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, look at those. Move along. Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
I was waiting.
Hold on to the agenda. Make sure we're-